What's good, what's good, what's good? On today's vlog, we are headed all the way to East London to go and try the full range of the East London Liqueur Company's alcohols. So stay tuned. Yeah, don't go anywhere, yeah? Don't go anywhere.
You're not obliged to taste absolutely everything. So I'm just going to quickly, founded in 2014 by Alex, who's the founder. Alex has a bar background as well as most of us on the team. We variously have bartended or spent too much time in bars. And so when Alex founded East London, the climate was full of big boys, they've all been around for a really long time, and they're popular for a reason, but there was so much space in there for independent producers of well-made liquids that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, and so that's what we wanted to do. So the first thing and the most important thing for us when we make spirits is flavour. It has to taste good, right? And then the second consideration is you have to be able to buy that bottle every month. We started off by making these two products. So gin and vodka was and still is our bread and butter. Then rum came next. I think pre-COVID times, 2019. Whiskies we've been making since the start as well, but whiskey takes a little bit of time before you can sell it, right?
I tried their full range of alcohol for 1 hour, priced at £35.
There's an internal debate here as to what this actually is. Where we were in Bow Wharf originally, there was like a dip in the canal. So some people say it's that, also with our little styler. I've been saying it's the Thames, so I'm going to stick with Thames.
Or the East London Snake.
Vodka, like almost the most important part of drinking a vodka is how does it feel when it hits your palate. Sometimes we call this mouth feel, but all that means is like, what's that texture? Is it sharp? Is it smooth? Is it thin? Or is it thick? What you should notice with this vodka is that it has a slightly thicker texture. If you had a Smirnoff side by side with this, you'd notice extra level viscosity. A lot of that has to do with the way that we've distilled vodka, but a lot of that is also due to that wheat base. If you think about wheat as like the grain they use to make the breads, right? Think of all the different breads. If you take like rye, you've got something that's a little bit spicy. Malt is a little bit sort of rich. Wheat tends to be quite doughy and soft, and so that translates into spirits. And so that's the kind of key consideration for us. We want it to really feel thick and smooth on the palate.
Before we continue the episode, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, please go and subscribe. It means a great deal to me. I'm on the road to 500 subscribers, which will get me monetized. I can then bring out more videos weekly. I can up the quality of my videos. I can develop series ideas that I've got for the channel. And lastly, go on more adventures. So, if you're liking the content, please like, comment and subscribe. It really helps grow the channel. Peace.
We had a few different wars that the Dutch were involved with. I think we had 2 monarchs that came from there as well, like 1700s or something. There was a lot of cultural, crossover. People in the trenches, were both British and Dutch, and the Dutch used to be necking this thing, jumping over the trenches, and so that's kind of the theory of where we got gin from. So we essentially modified the recipe a little bit, made it less kind of malt and more focused on juniper. If you guys haven't tried juniper consideration, and so this gin, we're using very few ingredients. We only use 7 botanicals to make this. We've got what I like to refer to as a flavour gin. So you start off with juniper, which is like quite fresh, fragrant, and then you go up into 2 different citrus fields. So we've got pink grapefruit and lemon peel. And then we move on to a few different spices. So we've got cardamom, which is super fragrant. If you smell this on the nose, the first thing you should get is citrus, and then you get cardamom after that. Coriander seeds, which will add cubeb, which is a kind of pepper. And then we end on angelica root, which is a sort of earthy, structured botanical. It gives you a bit of a background to your gin, right? So citrus, spice, earthiness, juniper. If you've got that complete journey there, you can make any of those drinks that I just talked about, and you can do them really well. And so what that means for you is you don't have to buy 10 different gins. And that's, it's great for people who, getting booze for home, but particularly for bartenders, it's really important. So this little bit in here is where you fill up your liquid, so let's put some vodka in there. We want to make gin, so we know we need some juniper, so we can stick our juniper berries in there. We can stick our other botanicals in there, then we close it up, and you begin to heat it using this outside jacket. So this is pumped through with, in big stills it's normally steam. With this one I think we use hot water, could be steam. And then our liquid will start to boil. As that temperature goes up, you start to get flavours of your botanicals infusing into your vodka, right? And then as the temperature increases, that liquid will start to evaporate, so it will start to become gas. It will rise up the still and then reach our kind of still head here. This is called a line arm, so we go in that way. And the further away we go from our heat source down here, the cooler it's going to get. So the cooler it gets, it's going to convert it back into liquid. And so we collect our liquid off here, and it'll literally be pouring out here, and you can taste it when it's ready if you want to start tapping it. This part of the still is called a column. So if you want to do kind of further levels of distillation to make it a little bit purer in style, a bit lighter, a bit more delicate, you can make use of this before condensing the liquids. In Jamaica, once you've crushed your sugarcane and you've got your sugarcane juice or your molasses, the next step is fermentation. So you stick your juice or your molasses into a big kind of tank, and then you add yeast into the tank and you let it kind of ferment. Jamaican fermentation goes on for a really long period of time. And you can think about this like a category in so many ways. You can produce rums that are so different in style. The style of rum, the approach to making whiskey. When you talk about whiskey, the big conversation is what barrel have you? What people don't talk about is where do the grains come from, or how long have you fermented for, what type of yeasts have you worked around with. When we looked at the rum, we saw how much flavour comes from that fermentation process. Right? Basically 90% of flavour is coming from fermentation, but we get booze from those. But if you use that flavour production...
Yeah, it's not chocolate, is that right?
Yeah, chocolate is a really good tasting note, and that comes down to that sort of Marisota barley that I was talking about. It gives you this really kind of malty, rich kind of chocolate. So if you have single malt on the label of whiskey, you know it's going to be kind of biscuity, cereally, kind of porridgey, which is what malt gives you. You know it's going to have a certain characterful flavour to it because pot stills give you kind of really kind of full body flavourful spirits. So if you compare that to a blend which might be a little bit lighter.
What? Dexter's approach. Yeah. Literally, people are. I said, I've only seen these in cartoons.
All that we have is most of our whiskey is always going to be in this sort of age range of about 4 to 6 years.
Yeah.
And then about 10% of our whiskies that we make each year will hold back for longer aging.
Yeah.
So that way, you have occasional older releases. But our style of whiskey is really key. Like the key component of that style is to not rely on age, right? It's to look at fermentation processes. So we ferment our whiskey for about 2 to 3 times longer than you would normally do in Scotland, for example. And then we talked about the grains as well.
Yeah.
So much of our flavour is loaded on the front end, and then barrel is kind of equally part of the equation, but it's not technical information. But I think there's a way of liquid that basically takes us in as well.
Cool.
We release maybe 1 or 2 of these a year. like different barrels. And so this barrel, we call it Violet. So this barrel has come from the region of Ireland, Scotland, which is traditionally where you make your kind of smoky.
So that Ardbeg.
Ardbegs there, Floyd, Lagavulin, Bunnahabhain, all of these kind of big smoky whiskies that people know. So we've used one of those barrels. I didn't mention this, but whiskey is basically distilled beer and then you stick it into a barrel. So when you make beer from rye, you get left in your mash tun this really kind of sludgy, like just really goopy substance that takes ages to clean out. So it's not super fun to actually make. But the stuff that you make from it is really unique. In the UK, I think we're not super familiar with rye in the way that we are with single malt whiskies. It tends to be an American style of production. If you look at things like Rittenhouse rye, or like Sazerac, or maybe like Bullet, or sometimes like Woodford Reserve will do a rye. American style is very different to what we do. We blend our rye grain with a lot of malted barley. There are some new projects that I can't talk about.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, but keep an eye peeled.
Cool, yeah.
Because it's stuff that we haven't done before.
Can we take these stickers with us?
Yes, the stickers are for you guys, of course, please. But yeah, no, thank you guys so much for coming.
Okay, so what's good, guys? I've had a fantastic time at the tasting, the East London Liqueur Company. If you haven't been already, make sure you go. Wonderful people, story, what they're doing. They're a small alcohol business doing amazing things, and they've got people at the heart of their business. What more could you ask for? I've had a dope time, met some wonderful people. So as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. What are you doing?